The sound was a violation of the quiet Yorkshire morning, a sharp, metallic rap that echoed through the converted textile mill. Inside the barracks, 30 women froze. The knock was a ghost from a past they had tried to outrun, a sound that had once preceded selections, interrogations, or a silent march into the unknown. Instincts, honed in the chaos of collapse, took over. Breath caught in throats. Fingers, half-buttoning threadbare blouses, stilled. Eyes, wide with a familiar, gut-wrenching fear, met across the cold room. Gerda Hoffman, 23, a former Luftwaffe signals auxiliary, pressed herself against the damp brick wall, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The scent of wet wool from her coat, still damp from yesterday's rain, mixed with the sharp tang of lye soap and the sour odor of unwashed bodies and unspoken terror. She remembered the last such knock, in the rubble of Hamburg, expecting the summary justice of a conquering soldier. Instead, she had been given water and told to wait. The bullet never came. Lieselot Krauss, a nurse of 31 who had tended the mangled casualties in Normandy until her field hospital was overrun, closed her eyes. Her lips moved soundlessly, forming the words of the Lord's Prayer. Her mind conjured an image of her daughter in Dresden, 4 years old, with apple-red cheeks and a laugh like bells. The word that came from the other side of the door turned her blood to ice. "Ladies, please, showers are ready. Take your time." Showers. The word hung in the air, not as an offer of cleanliness, but as a blade. Every woman in the room had heard the whispers from the east, the coded horror of what showers could mean. It was the end. A final, grotesque deception. Anneliese Beck, just 19, a clerk pulled from a burning Berlin office, felt her hands begin to tremble uncontrollably. She had not felt hot water on her skin in 4 months, not since her capture, not during the harrowing transport and stinking boxcars. She smelled of sweat, fear, and the acrid smoke of a dying regime. The door did not crash open. It swung inward, gently, almost hesitantly. Framed in the doorway stood not a battle-hardened soldier, but a young British corporal of the Women's Royal Army Corps, her hair sandy, her face unsettlingly young. She held a clipboard like a shield. "You will please to come," she said in halting, carefully practiced German. "Hot water, soap, towels, clean clothes after. No rush. We wait." The promise was so absurd, so antithetical to everything they expected, that it felt like the most sophisticated cruelty of all. Chapter 2: The Mercy of Hot Water. No one moved. The British corporal, whom they would later learn was named Margaret, waited with a patience that was itself disorienting. The silence stretched, thick with suspicion and dread. Finally, driven by a despair that outweighed her fear, or perhaps a simple, aching need to feel clean, Anneliese took a hesitant step forward. Then another. SH. No one moved. The British corporal, whom they would later learn was named Margaret, waited with a patience that was itself disorienting. The silence stretched, thick with suspicion and dread. Finally, driven by a despair that outweighed her fear, or perhaps a simple, aching need to feel clean, Anneliese took a hesitant step forward. Then another. She walked as if to the gallows, her entire body trembling, towards the nearest shower stall. She reached a shaking hand and turned the tap. With a hiss and a sputter, water erupted from the nozzle. She flinched, expecting ice or scalding steam. Instead, a steady, warm stream cascaded down. A choked gasp escaped her. It was warm. Genuinely, wonderfully warm. She held her hand under the flow, the sensation so foreign and so profoundly human that the dam of her composure broke. She began to cry, tears mingling with the water on her face. One by one, the other women followed, shedding their grimy uniforms, stepping under the streams. The room filled with the sound of pouring water and muffled sobs. Gerda stood under the spray, eyes closed, head tilted back, letting the heat penetrate to her bones. She scrubbed at her skin with the rough bar of soap until it was pink and raw, washing away not just the grime of months, but the lingering phantom stench of firestorms and defeat. In the stall beside her, she could hear Lieselot weeping, great, heaving sobs that seemed to tear from a place deeper than sorrow. It was the sound of a soul unclenching from a years-long fist of terror. When they emerged, wrapped in thick towels, their hair dripping and their skin glowing, they found the British guards standing exactly where they had promised. And on a table beside the piles of clean, simple clothes, was a tray. On it were chocolate bars, British military issue, wrapped in plain brown paper. Margaret picked one up and held it out to Gerda. "Take," she said, her voice softer now. "Welcome." Gerda took the chocolate. She unwrapped it slowly, methodically, as if performing a sacred ritual. The first bite was so sweet it was almost painful, a flavor from a forgotten world. Something inside her, something hard and frozen, shattered. She sat on a wooden bench, the chocolate in one hand, and wept without restraint. The days that followed were a lesson in a new, bewildering reality. The camp was not a place of punishment, but of processing. The women were assigned work details, cleaning, kitchen duty, clerical tasks, that were mundane but never brutal. Lieselot, with her medical training, was assigned to assist the camp doctor, Major Henley, a man who treated her not as a prisoner, but as a colleague, even asking her opinion on treatments. Gerda, with her Signal Corps language skills, was put to work in the communications office, translating documents and typing. She sat at a real desk, her fingers clicking on typewriter keys, drinking tea from a china cup. The sheer normalcy of it was disorienting. The food was another revelation. Porridge for breakfast, thick vegetable soup with bread for lunch, stew or fish for dinner. It was simple, but it was consistent, nutritious, and there was enough. Anneliese, whose body had become a skeletal map of deprivation, felt her strength returning, her cheeks losing their hollowed-out goneness. Their barracks, though drafty, were clean, with cots and thin mattresses. There was electric light, a luxury that allowed them to read into the evening from a small camp library stocked with German classics. There were radiators that hissed and clanked, but actually produced heat against the encroaching autumn chill. This was not the squalor of a POW camp as propaganda had depicted. It was a place of order, even a nascent, fragile form of care. The cognitive dissonance was a constant, low hum in the background of their thoughts. They had been prepared for brutality, for revenge. They were entirely unprepared for this quiet, steadfast decency. As autumn deepened, the camp administration introduced workshops. In a repurposed mill room, sewing machines were set up. For many of the women, the rhythmic, mechanical act of sewing became a form of therapy. Anneliese discovered a latent talent, her fingers guiding fabric under the chattering needle with a focus that quieted her mind. She made herself a simple gray dress, and when she put it on, the fit and feel of something made by her own hands for herself was a powerful affirmation of her returning identity. Music, too, became a bridge. A gramophone in the common room played records in the evenings. At first, it was German folk music and operatic arias, familiar comforts from a lost home. Then, the guards introduced jazz. The vibrant, unpredictable notes of Duke Ellington and Glenn Miller filled the room. This was the degenerate music they had been taught to despise, yet hearing it now, free from ideology, it sounded like life itself, improvised, resilient, and joyful. The younger women, led by a cheerful guard named Susan, began to learn the jitterbug. The sight of German prisoners and British guards dancing together, laughing at missteps in a drafty common room, was a scene of surreal and profound peace. It was in these moments, the shared focus of creating, the universal language of music, the simple, physical joy of dance, that the rigid categories of enemy and captor began to dissolve, replaced by the tentative bonds of shared humanity. Evenings in the common room became a time for quiet conversation. Huddled in mismatched chairs, the women began to talk, tentatively at first, then with increasing candor. The shared experience of the showers and the chocolate had broken a seal. Lieselot spoke of Normandy, of the endless river of broken young men, of holding the hand of a boy no older than 18 as he bled out, thinking not of the cause, but of the mother who would never see him again. Anneliese, her voice often barely a whisper, confessed her blind faith in the regime, the intoxicating fervor of the early days in Berlin, and the slow, chilling realization of the truth as the city crumbled around her. She spoke of the propaganda that had promised victory until the very end, and the crushing weight of the deception. Gerda recounted the firestorms in Hamburg, the coded messages growing increasingly desperate, and the moral certainty that had curdled into a deep, corrosive doubt. They were not just sharing stories, they were performing a collective exorcism of their pasts. In the listening, and in the being heard without judgment, they began to process the trauma they had endured and the complicity they had borne. They were piecing together, from their fragmented experiences, a more complete and terrible picture of the war they had served, and in doing so, they were beginning to forgive themselves and each other. The abstract concept of the British began to fracture, replaced by distinct individuals with their own histories and hurts. Corporal Margaret had a fiancé, demobilization delayed, still stationed in France. She showed the women his photograph, her voice laced with a longing they all understood. Major Henley, the doctor, had served in North Africa and had lost a brother at Dunkirk. Yet he never let that loss color his professional duty to his prisoners. Mrs. Davies, the stout camp cook, had 3 sons in the Royal Navy. She ruled her kitchen with gruff authority, and would often slip an extra slice of bread or a larger portion of stew to a woman who looked particularly pale. These were not the monstrous caricatures of enemy propaganda. They were people, flawed and kind, carrying their own burdens of war. This realization was perhaps the most destabilizing of all. Lieselot wrote in her diary, "The guard with the red hair brought me tea and asked about my daughter. She showed me pictures of her own children. They are beautiful. How can we have been enemies? The question haunts me. I look at Margaret and see a girl, like I was once. I see the doctor and see a healer, as I strive to be. We were told they were barbarians. But the only barbarity I see is the one we left behind in the ruins." In a bold experiment in trust, a small group of prisoners, including Gerda, was taken on a supervised walk to the nearby village. The journey through the green, rolling lanes of Yorkshire was a surreal experience. The landscape was so untouched, so peaceful, it felt like a different planet from the bomb-shattered cities of Germany. Villagers stared as they passed. An old man spat on the ground in a gesture of pure contempt, a reminder that the war's hatred still simmered. But a woman hanging laundry gave a tentative wave. A child, ignorant of the politics of hate, offered a shy, curious smile. They were allowed to enter a small village shop. For Gerda, standing amidst the simple abundance, jars of jam, notebooks, bolts of cloth, was overwhelming. She had no money, but the shopkeeper, a woman with gentle eyes, pressed a peppermint candy into her hand. "On the house, love," she said. The small act of kindness, from a civilian in a nation they had tried to bomb into submission, was a powerful testament to the resilience of ordinary decency. She sucked on the candy all the way back to camp, its sharp sweetness a symbol of a world that was not entirely broken. Christmas 1945 arrived, cold and gray. The camp, however, was determined to kindle a spark of light. The women had made paper chains and decorations in the workshops, and a small, scraggly pine tree was erected in the common room. On Christmas Eve, the British staff organized a celebration. They sang carols, first in German, then in English, the languages blending in a hesitant, but beautiful, harmony. The Christmas meal was a feast compared to their usual rations: roast chicken, potatoes, gravy, and a rich pudding with custard. But the most meaningful gifts were the ones they had made for each other: knitted scarves, socks, and embroidered handkerchiefs. Gerda wore the deep blue scarf Anneliese had made for her, feeling its warmth as more than just physical. The pinnacle of the evening for Lieselot was not the food or the song, but a letter, forwarded through the Red Cross. It was from her daughter, a few simple lines in a child's scrawl. "Muddy, I miss you. Come home soon. I love you." She held the flimsy paper as if it were holy scripture, and as she wept, Margaret simply sat beside her, a silent, solid presence of shared understanding. With the spring of 1946 came the beginning of repatriation. The process was orderly, their papers reviewed and stamped. The future, however, was terrifyingly uncertain. Anneliese was to be sent to the British zone of Germany. Lieselot faced the grim prospect of repatriation to the Soviet zone, a fate she dreaded. Gerda, after much deliberation, petitioned to stay temporarily in Britain, her skills needed for the reconstruction efforts. Gerda's return to Hamburg in May 1946 was a shock. The city was a vast plain of rubble, a stark contrast to the green wholesomeness of Yorkshire. She found her mother living in a shattered apartment, sharing 2 rooms with other displaced families. When Gerda told her stories of the camp, of the showers and the chocolate and the kindness, her mother could only attribute it to divine luck. But Gerda knew it was more than that. It was a conscious choice, a moral decision by their captors to uphold a standard of humanity that her own nation had abandoned. That choice had not just spared her life, it had given her a moral compass for the future. Lieselot, reunited with her daughter in Dresden, wrote to Gerda of the harsh conditions under Soviet control, but also of the lesson she carried from England, that kindness could exist even amidst enmity, and that this knowledge was a weapon against despair. In the grand, brutal narrative of World War II, the story of the German women POWs in Yorkshire became a forgotten footnote. But for the women who lived it, the experience was foundational. They had journeyed to the heart of the enemy and found not monsters, but people. They had expected vengeance and found mercy. This collision between ideology and reality had shattered their worldview more completely than any battle. Anneliese would eventually marry an English soldier and settle in a Yorkshire village not far from the camp. She kept a photograph on her mantelpiece, of herself, Gerda, and Lieselot, smiling in the camp courtyard in December 1945. When her children asked, she told them, "They taught me that humanity can survive even when everything else is lost." Gerda, visiting for Anneliese's wedding in 1952, stood in the small stone church and reflected on the journey from that terrifying dawn knock to this moment of peace. The knock had promised one possible world, a world of final solutions and cruel endings. The mercy that followed had revealed another, a world where decency was a choice. The chocolate bar, the hot shower, the dance jitterbug, the shared carol, these were not trivialities. They were the small, stubborn seeds of reconciliation, sown not by treaties or governments, but by individual human hearts choosing hope over hate, and in doing so, quietly beginning to heal a broken world.